Hello, everyone. It's really my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Wang Xize. Wang Xize. Actually, why am I saying this is because not only he's my colleague, but also my hometown fellow. And unfortunately, I just realized this when I recently talked to him. Okay, Dr. Wang is currently assistant professor at the Department of Real Estate of AUS. Uh, as an urban planner by training, he works interdisciplinary in the field of urban planning, policy analysis, public health, and transport policy. He is particularly interested in investigating the impact of urban planning and policies on people's health and well-being. Prior to AUS, Dr. Wang got postdoc scholar at Berkeley from 27 to 2019. His PhD program is from USC, University of Southern California. And he got his master at University of Minnesota, and then BA in urban planning and BA in economics at the Peking University of China. Without further ado, let us welcome Dr. Wang to give his talk.
All right, so maybe I can share my screen.
Yep.
So first of all, so thank you for Prof. Feng for his warm introduction, and I want to thank CFPR again for having me. As Dr. Feng, Prof. Feng just introduced, so my mainly my mainly field of expertise is in urban planning, and as I see, this topic is actually, excuse me, intended for intended for urban planning journal, but I hopefully this is also some topic with interest of the CFPR community, and I especially welcome the feedbacks from the CFPR colleagues with the assumption that probably some of you are knowing more about the field knowledge, like closer than me from the perspective of sociology and psychology. So. Anyhow, so the topic is looking at the association with, broadly speaking, urban built environment, which is something urban planner or urban policymaker can examine and make make adjustments, and also about people's mental health. And here I focus on one particular mental health aspect, which is depression. And this work is a collaborative work with me and Dr. Liu Tao from Peking University. So I think we will have a very quick motivation. So first of all, I think as we all know, mental health is an important aspect of well-being, and that has been discussed in many channels and many policy documents as well. So for instance, so mental health is a part of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal. But of course, if you look at health, focus on health and urban health, this is also something that has been referred quite often. And unfortunately, we are actually seeing, mental health issues has been quite prevalent in the modern society for many reasons. And we have many examples, but here I pick the example locally. So in Singapore, so Institute of Mental Health has conducted a mental health survey for all Singaporeans. As I see here, the publication date is 2018, but the survey has actually done in 2016. It says that 1 in every 7 people has experienced mental disorders in a specific part of her or his lifetime. And this is actually has been higher because this survey is a second wave and the first wave is done in 2010. At that time, the rate is 1 in 8. So we can see an upward trend here. And even from more policy or economic perspective, you can also see this is something bearing a quite high cost of the society. From the monetary and the physical perspective, this is a estimation by the US saying that 1.4% of the GDP has been attributed to the cost beared by mental health issues. Of course, this is not only related to the directed expenditure, such as you go to consultation or you take a medication, but also related to the estimated loss of productivity because of mental health issues. And it's a quite huge number, is 1.4 of the GDP. The data is 2002, and hopefully, I mean, I must say, like, hopefully the number does not increase in the recent years, but I have to say that it is very, very unlikely. Another way to look at this is look at how many, like, it's called disease adjusted life year. So basically for layperson, that means how many, like how long of your expected lifetime reduction is related to mental health issues. And even if the direct impact is not that high, but if you're talking about direct plus indirect effects, actually it can be as high as 20%. And I mean, this data and this kind of issue goes on and on. And I think some of you are already aware, even as early as 2019, 2018, 2019, when the Singapore mental health survey I just talked about, when the report leads out, President Halima started to form a task force saying that this is one thing the government wants to focus. And the reason I'm saying this is because actually recently has been issued even more because of COVID. But I think just want to let you know, even before COVID, mental health issue is something has drawn attention of the policymakers. And of course, when even like in Singapore's task force and task force everywhere, when we talk about mental health issues, normally we talk about social support, normally we talk about medication, consultation, of course. But I think from a perspective of urban planner, we are interested so is this something also urban planning or the built environment designers, makers, whether this is something we can play a role. And why we are thinking is a health condition is related to mental health. Actually, from a little bit of theoretical background, we can see this as a broader, like a broader theoretical framework called the social ecological framework. So this is more from a public health expert saying that. So health conditions, general health conditions is not only about your genes or your like physiological factors, but actually the broadly defined environmental factors always play a role. Of course, here when they say broadly defined environmental factors, that means non-medical factors, like not only like related, like not only a specific built environment, but maybe also some other maybe some other environment issues, like including like your social network, etc. But here, of course, we are going to detailed about among different many environmental factors. We are going to only talk about the urban built environment because this is something we are interested. And there are literatures from like applied psychologists and also the psychological therapist. So they are examining like what is the depression comes from, and they're saying that excuse me, people are constantly exposed to stress may have mental health problem, including depression. And the social, physiological process is when people are facing stress. This stress can be different type of stress when I'm taking an exam or when I'm like feeling I'm gonna late for work. So in order to cope this stress, so you're gonna have a specific chemical called cortisol in your body. And that, if it's only a reasonable amount, that will help you, because that will make you more focused, that will make your work more efficient. But if you are like having this kind of extended amount of cortisol, for multiple times more than it is ideal, then you will have some emotional response, and that will make you depressed. And this stressor, as I said, it can be many different things. And here we are talking about one specific stressor, which is commute time, your journey to work. And that's the reason I use Bob Dylan's lyrics saying that this is the work you must go. This is the path, the journey you must go. Because if you have work, I mean, unless you are working remotely, you have to, this is the most common trip you have. You go from home to work, and sometimes it's long, sometimes it's short, sometimes it's pleasant, sometimes it's unpleasant. And you will see that whether this can be regarded as one of these stressors, and that will be associated with depression as one of the many mental health outcomes. So originally, I will have a few slides talk about what's the contribution of literature. But of course, that literature is targeting the transportation expert and urban planners. So I think I'm not going to take the time to introduce this. Yeah, because I mean, probably, the contribution of literature is all relative to what you know among the academic communities. Anyway, I think here, there are like studies in applied psychology saying that physical environment and depression or like any type of mental health outcomes are actually have different possible mechanisms. And I are talking about three. The first one is, I call them a separate stressor, saying that, so commute time creates stress, then let you have depression issues, and other stress, especially work-related stress, they are going to do that separately. They are going to contribute to depression separately. And I think for this type of audience, maybe I will say that just saying mediation, moderation, probably everyone knows. I mean, that is not the case of the urban planners, but maybe let me take a few minutes to talk about this as well. So by mediation, by saying that, so commute time is not a separate stressor, but actually it is related to depression by increase your work stress. By saying that the stress of like everything about work, including like your relationship with your boss and like your effort to take from your home to work, that will work together to increase your depression. And the third is saying that commute time does not contribute to depression separately, but that will either make you more robust or make you more mentally fragile about other work stress of depression. So of course, these are three different perspectives to think about the dynamics between urban environment, commute time, and depression. And I think one of the tasks here is trying to see. So first of all, the first question is whether it is related. And second is how. So we have three hypotheses. Are they all true, or there's only one are having the more fit of the reality? Then I want to talk a little about the details after getting the big picture. So first of all, so you take different modes to work. In transportation planning, modes means the way you go to work. So you are taking transit, which means public transportation, you are driving, you are biking or working. So are they contribute to your mental health issues equally? Or some are actually more dangerous than the other? And secondly is about the total time. We have the time with traffic delay, you are stuck in traffic, and the time you are not stuck with traffic, which is actually you are moving. So whether they are having an effect of your mental health like differently. And then we are going to look at some subgroups, saying that whether it is a different age will have effect, or like what type of like workers, whether they will be different or they are the same. So this is the basic questions. I think now is the time to talk about how we get our data. So this is a survey collected originally in 2018, and we have some follow-up in 2019 for the city of Beijing. And while I introduce the title of study, I would say Beijing residents, because this is focusing on about 75% of Beijing's residents, which are the so-called 户口 holders or like formal residency holders. So this is not a representative of the migrant workers or those do not have like the so-called formal residency in the city. And we have around a little bit 4,000 respondents for the whole survey, as I'm going to introduce later. Some of them, because they do not have complete data, has to drop out of our empirical models. So it is ranging by 7 districts and 36 sub-districts and 168 neighborhoods, or I would say neighborhood councils. And each, only one individual per household will be selected for the so-called main respondents. They will answer the whole questions. And this person has to be between 18 and 60 years old. And okay. So the 7th district is like this. So probably most of you, if not all of you, has quite familiar with the city before. So I'm going to go over that quickly. And you can see that all the shaded districts are the districts we have, our survey has been covered. So we are trying to be as geographically and social economically representative as possible. We do not have the data here in the set of slides, but our sample, at least this whole sample, is quite representative. And so for the inner district, there used to be 4 districts, now it's 2 districts, right? And we are covering one of them, the Xize district. And for those within the core urbanized area, or like the so-called central city defined by the 2016, the most recent city master plan, we have 4 more districts. And among the 4 districts, Haidian, Chaoyang, and Fengtai are the districts we covered. We did not cover Shijingsan because I think we are like representative enough. And this part is normally regarded as, now they call them 6 urban districts, because the before that is 8 because they have some combinations. So this is normally the core, like the generally defined urbanized areas in the city of Beijing. And we also have covered 3 the so-called X-urban, or like rural kind of like county type of district, Changping, Tongzhou, and Fangshan. So this is hopefully can give you a geographical idea of how the survey has been covered. And we will also have a map later to show the location of the specific neighborhood councils. But having a geographic sense, I think is now time to introduce our empirical models. So it's a linear regression, but because the depression is actually like a binary, whether you are screen positive or you screen negative. So it is like a 1-0. And another way to think about this is it will be a logistic regression or logit models. Then we will have, this is our key exposure variable, commute time. And we are going to look at the whole, then we are going to disaggregate into different parts. And then I talk, because we need to look at the relation to work stress. So we are also collect data on work stress. And this is, so it is originally like a Likert scale, saying that either you do not have work stress, you have some little work stress, larger work stress, and very large. So we just, because we need to do some interaction effects, so we just transform that to a dummy variable. Then we will have a set of I think control variables. I mean, this xi actually really mean the social demographics. And so we will have a list of social demographic variables. I'm going to introduce that in a few slides. And then, so we will have a dummy variable to control for the geographic location. As you see here, we only use one dummy variable called central city versus non-central city. I mean, actually, ideally, it will be great if we can use a specific district. And actually, this is where I started. But the problem is, as you're going to see later, so actually because the depressive symptom distribution is very imbalanced. We only have 6% of them are positive and 94% are negative. In this case, if we use a specific district, the whole, like the overall model is fine, but if you look at, we want to do regression by different subsamples, actually we are losing observations. But I think rest assured, so no matter we have the whole sample or the subsample, the results are the same or consistent, but I think it's better to report this model. And in order to recognize that there will be some differences by districts, so here we cluster the standard error by district. This is similar to like many public health people doing the multi-level model to acknowledge that the data is hierarchical. Another way to say this is we acknowledge that there is a possibility that like people in the same district may correlate with each other somewhat. And at least when we cluster standard errors, when we are looking at whether a coefficient is significant or not, we are being more conservative and assume that there is a possibility that people in the same district will correlate with each other. Okay. So after the models, I think it's time to introduce some variables. By assessing depressive symptoms, we are using a scale called CSD-10. So CSD is the institution to design these scales. So it's actually a series of questions asking about your feeling during the past week. And I don't think it's worth the time to list all of them. You can read that and it's available online. So for instance, asking, I'm bothered by things that usually doesn't bother me. And say that whether it is like doesn't happen or it's happened quite often, then we will have the scores like 0, 1, 2, or 3. And we also have some positives like I feel happy, and then it will be the reverse, right? So if it's not, if you seldomly feel happy, you will have 3, and you feel very happy, you have 0. Then you will have a 0 to 30 score. Then, so based on many clinical and like clinical and like theoretical practices. So there are like the recommended CAS score is 10, which means that if you are scoring 10 and above, that means that you are positive and you have depressive symptoms. And if you have a score lower than 10, it will be otherwise. In order to test the robustness, I also change the CAS score from 9 from 10 to 9 or from 10 to 11. So basically the result doesn't change. Then for the commute time, so we're not asking about specific survey day, but asking about what is your everyday life. So basically we're asking what's your most common experience from home to work. And they're going to record, so first of all, door time. And secondly, we want to ask a total time, but also ask for like what kind of, like if you are using different modes from home to work, ask about what is like a specific time used. So let's take an example to give you an idea. So for instance, if a person takes 5 minutes to walk from home to bus station, then 20 minutes for bus, then after getting out of bus station, bus stop, they take another 5 minutes from bus stop to the workplace. Then the person will record 10 minutes for walking, combine the two together, and 20 minutes for bus. And then I'm asking about, so based on your experience, if you do not have traffic, because this is home to work, that is the morning and everyone is congested. If there's no traffic congestion, how much time you think it will take? And then say that, so right now the bus takes 20 minutes, but if there's no congestion, there will be only 20 minutes. So we record that so we can do some calculations later. And this is a control variable specifically for social economics. So hopefully we have included all the possible confining factors, including your gender, your age, your living arrangement, whether you live alone or you have, like you have spouse, you have partner, whether you live with children, your income, your home ownership status, whether you are having a condominium or you are actually looking at either traditional type of housing or your housing is provided by your company or something called your danwei, also your education level and your work. And here, so we are following we are following the census method of surveying your occupation and group them. So we have this kind of public officials or public servants, like managers in like different type of industries. And also this specialist means technical, either lawyers, professors, engineers, programmers, all in specialists. And this agricultural service and manufacturer is basically the way to following that you are a blue collar worker working on either the primary, which means agriculture, secondary means manufacturing construction, or like tertiary, which means service. And also there's always like other in case there are different like arrangement. And so these are the control variables. And because we we need like a full we need the observation with a full list of all the variables. Some of them are unavailable, like does not have like a good quality of depression scales. Some of them does not have good quality of commute patterns. Some of them does not have good quality of residential patterns or social economic data. So we end up with around 1,600 residents in our sample. And so the origin survey has 168 neighborhoods. And then so we have around 165. And I don't think, so I think we also have 36 sub-districts, like one level above. And I don't think we lose sub-district. So which means that at least from the like the number of neighborhood council perspective, so the those in the sample and those not in the sample are somewhat quite balanced. And this is what it looks like. And the larger circle means that in the same neighborhood, so the number of observations are larger. So I guess now is the time to share some of the descriptive statistics. So this is a table. I think I want to highlight a couple of things. The first is around 60% of them has screened positive of depression. So it's not a very good share, which I guess is good news. And I compare that. There is not a very good like comparison saying that what the so-called census show about the depression symptoms. I checked different sources, and I think one is I think there's one survey, like one survey in China. So like surveying every like every city is a panel data. Probably that's heard by sociologists. So when they are like searching, collecting the depression scales, they are using a slightly different measure, and there are somewhat comparable. So I think the main story is that our number is slightly lower than what that number shows, even if it's not, even if they're not like the same scale, but not that much. I think if you're interested, I'm happy to talk more about this. So I think somewhat representative, but there are some differences. And the work stress share is pretty high. So actually 60% say that they have some stress at work. And the overall commute time, here I grouped that by 10 minutes. So it's around 39 minutes. And you can also take a look at the other, the descriptive statistics of other variables. So I think I'm not going to go one by one. And then I think it's time to show some regression outputs. So the first is the whether and how question. So by whether, we're going to look at so whether they do have an association or not, and how is the three mechanism I just introduced. So I think we will start to, so if you look at column 1 first, we can see that longer the commute time, the more likely you're going to get depressed. Then if we put work stress here, I think one thing we can see is that, so the commute time and the depression relationship is still statistically significant, and actually the coefficient does not change a lot, and which means that it's actually, so the commute time and the depression association is not through work stress. It's more like a separate like a separate stressor. And then if you look at 1 versus 3, or sorry, 2 versus 3, and then we're going to see that, so when interact the two together, there's not significant, which means that there's not a buffering or like strengthening effect. So I guess, so based on this, the answer will be that, so this is our preferred model. Then we do like a very rough estimation of the marginal effects. So we just assume, because that's a nonlinear model, we assume that every continuous variable is in its means average value, and every categorical variable is in this mode, which means that we all go to the most like the most frequent categorical variable. Then we can see that 10 minutes more commute time is associated with 1.1 more higher likelihood of having depressive symptoms. And here I think we are going to reiterate the model here, saying that, so this one is actually supported, the other two not so much. Then, so I think it's time to look a little bit detailed, say that what segment of your commute time is like associated with more, like associated with the depressive symptoms more. And so this is basically the model 2 in the previous stage, just put here for reference. Then we can see if you look at column 2, so free flow time plus traffic delay time should be overall commute time. And this one is already collected, like in our questionnaire, if you remember a few slides back. So here we can see free flow time is the factor significantly associated with depression, but not the traffic delay time. I think if I want to talk a little bit more here, so actually this, before working on this survey, we have done a similar study in the Western context, specifically Latin America before. At that time, actually traffic delay time is the one significant, not the free flow time. And after running the survey, we sit together and say why this is the case, why is it different, and we realize a very interesting thing. So theoretically, when you're stuck in traffic, you actually have more stress than like it is flow in traffic. But in the Chinese context, the counterpart of you are stuck in traffic is not you're stuck in traffic, but you are waiting a long line in the railway stations, or you're waiting a long time for waiting a bus. And this is something we didn't realize beforehand, and saying that this is something we can only make speculation at this time. And next time we are going to specifically ask how long time you're waiting for your train or your bus. And at that time, we are quite confident that the result will be that will be the part contribute to most of the depression. But anyway, so this is what the data looks for now. And then we break up by different nodes, because when we're asking overall commute time, we ask them what specific mode they are taking. So which means if we add all of them together, it equals to this one. And there are actually two interesting things we can take a look. The first is already reported here, is the motorcycle. You can see that the marginal effect of motorcycle is large, nearly doubles of the other ones. And the second part is non-motorized. The non-motorized regression, which means the time you're walking or the time you are riding a bicycle, actually does not have a significant relationship. Even if it is counterintuitive, especially for many of the planners, actually this kind of finding is not alone. Actually, there are many other findings, I think, especially a few in UK, have a similar result. Our hypothesis is that, so physical activity is good for mental health, but like longer time for your journey to work is actually not good for mental health. And in this case, the time you spend either by walking or biking together actually is from your home to work, it's actually the two effects adding together. And maybe it is canceled out. And of course, this is only speculation, because we cannot separate the two effects here. So I don't know whether it's really they are canceling out or not. But I think this is one of the maybe reasonable speculation. And then, so we are going to run a few subsample regressions. So the first is, so because our sample is like 18 to 60, so roughly like 20 to 60. So the midpoint will be 40. So we just say that compare like the age 40 and lower and the age 41 or over. So when we run the regression separately, we can see that. So the marginal effect, or like the strength of association, is much stronger. excuse me, much stronger for those relatively older. Like every 10 more minutes, we associate with 5 more likely for depressive symptoms. And for younger people, they actually only half of the average, like 0.5% more likely. And finally, we are looking for job types. The job types. So I think, as I previously showed, blue collar are those working on either manufacturing, service, or agriculture. And the white collar are either like leaders or managers working in the government, or like working on technical issues. Now here we can see that, so blue collar workers are significant. And the margin effects for every 10 more minutes is 2%. And the white collar workers, only 10%, which means that it is maybe the effect is, if you are strict enough, it's just by random. And if you think this is still a fair chance, it is actually 0.4% more likely. I think this is wrap up with the empirical model part. I think I want to talk about 2 more things. The first thing is, so if we want to put into context, what does this 1.1% really mean? And of course, this kind of the so-called back of envelope calculation is always like estimate. We make a lot of strong assumptions and just give you an idea of scale. So what I do is, so the most recent population data saying that the so-called former residents in Beijing are 14.1 million. And based on our survey data, those are at school or those are employed is around 68%. Then we multiply them together, which means that we have 9.6 million people in Beijing are commute from from home to work. And our share of those have depressive symptoms is 6.1%, which means that currently we have around 600,000 people having this kind of issue. Then if we can, of course, this is association, this is not causation, but if we assume there's no omitted variable bias, we can say that, so if we can reduce the average commute time, remember it's 39 minutes, if we are reduced from 39 minutes to 34 minutes, so we will have 1.1 fewer depressive commuters, which if we make this calculation, it will be 30,000. So again, a lot of assumptions, a lot of roughly but if policymakers want to hear something, what your research show, I'll say that if you can reduce 5 minutes lower commute time for everyone, you can have 3,000 fewer people having distract only because of the commute. Then I think it's time to talk a little bit about policy implications, like planners and policymakers can learn from this study. So first of all, I can say that, as I said in the previous slide, if you can have effort to reduce commute time, like either by bring job closer to home, bring home closer to jobs, or you just simply optimize the transportation network, it will help to promote mental health condition of the residents. This is something maybe not like there are many things talk about healthy cities in China and other places, but this is the relationship between like transportation, commute, your journey to work, and mental health is something that has not been talked very oftenly. And other than like bring jobs to, jobs close to home and bring home close to jobs, there's also some other things we can consider. So for instance, like you can have flexible work schedule, which means that even if you still need to work, you don't need this many times doing something like this. You need to wait for an hour to get your light rail or subways. And if you can work at home occasionally, which means that you can, for instance, once a week, which means for that day of the week, you don't need to suffer from commute. And of course, if you're working home every day, that will be another issue. And this is not something I mean to focus, but I'm aware of that. And I think I want to say that one example is actually Singapore's urban planning has been praised by many places, including China. And Singapore is trying to say that we want to, by 2040, we want to have 90% of people not driving, but taking transit or riding a bike. They can reach whenever your workplace is within 45 minutes. And obviously, I think this is maybe a little bit difficult for Beijing because geographically it's bigger and it has 3 times the population. But I think this is something like every planner should think about. And of course, like our sample, the average commute time is 39 minutes. I think in the census, if I remember correctly, it's like 36 or 37. But I can see, as I showed that like briefly in the descriptive statistic part, actually there are quite a few people, their time journey to work is as high as 1.5 hours. And those people are the people we need to pay more attention to. And a little more about this is, as I said, among different modes, motorcycle. Of course, here motorcycle is like currently few people really ride a motorcycle. Most are riding e-scooters. We consider both. I mean, those are the people deserve special attention. I mean, because so at the current situation, you can see here in the picture too. This is in Beijing. There is not a dedicated scooter lane. Those people either ride with cyclists or they ride with the cars. And in either way, it is very it is very dangerous and not that safety compared to other modes. And that will definitely something can create specific extra mental stress compared to other people. I mean, I think many, if not all, but every you can remember, even when you are driving or you walk the buses, there are like especially when the road is congested, the scooter drivers, motorcyclists, they just cut through, cut through cars and trying to avoid the congestion. And I mean, from a safety standpoint, it's very dangerous, and it will definitely create you more mental stress. I think like either traffic safety programs, or if there's any way about dedicated motorcycle lanes, that will be helpful. Of course, this is a long way to go, but I think this is something it deserves attention. And finally, I want to highlight one recent example. Not entirely, like there's no way it's entirely targeting about people's mental health, and it's not even related to journey to work, but I think there's something quite related to my finding, our finding, in a quite interesting way. So this is something called joint ownership, joint property public housing, or in Chinese called 共有产权住房, or like something like price control housing, or 两线房. So this part is so based on their policy arrangement. So while we'll skip this kind of specific policy arrangement, they are going to specifically targeting for those people are blue collar, relatively lower income, and relatively older age. And they have a lot of limitations. You cannot transfer that. And the housing is a little bit smaller than the regular condominium. And if you look at those locations, so this is, I think this is a map in 2019, you can see they are mostly located in the places has not a prime location. But if you zoom in, I don't have a map here, but if we zoom in, they're all located close to major MRT stations, which means that this is a place can get those lower income, relatively lower income, lower middle class, blue collar workers, a place closer to home. So maybe this is one of the unintended consequences for this project, trying to bring home to work and closer to work. And of course, as I talked before about Singapore's plan, you are trying to move more work closer to home, like polycentric cities, and that will be another perspective to saying that will also save you commute time. So I think this is the final slide. So thank you so much, and thank you again for CFTR to have me, and all questions and comments are welcome.
Thank you very much, Xize. So now any questions from our audience? Please, yeah, Vincent, please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for the talk. I thought it was very clear, the way you presented, and it gives a good picture of what your research is about. But I think I want to ask the question about commute time.
Mm-hmm.
To my mind, it's not commute time per se, right, in itself, but it's rather the expected commute time, right? So if you expect the commute time to be half an hour, but it takes 50 minutes, you'll be more stressed, right?
Yes.
But if you expect the commute time to be, to be 10 minutes, but ends up 5, then you might be happier, and so on. So it's not the commute time in the absolute sense, but rather the expected commute time. Because, then that will give you a sense of whether there's a delay or there's no delay, whether there's a traffic jam, and so on, right? So I think it's not the commute time in itself. It is the expected commute time, and whether those expectations are met or not. Does it make sense?
Yes, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think I can, so first of all, thank you for your comment and questions, Dr. Trapp. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think I can answer this question 2 ways.
Okay.
So the first way is that, so first of all, I completely agree with what you said. And actually, this is one of the hypotheses I talk about, especially about this free flow time versus traffic delay time. And the metaphor I just made saying that, so this result is a little bit surprising. And actually what happened here is the waiting for train time. Because when we look at the urban environment, especially for the congested part, I think it is, even we can say statistically, this is something like average. But in reality, what more happens if there is a congested part. Today, you take 10 more minutes. Tomorrow, it takes 5 less minutes. This is one of the unpredictable part.
Yeah.
And this is part is something, at least partially, we are trying to capture. And of course, because our, so our way to phrase this variable is not specific close to the policy context, the local context. So we are not able to catch that this time part, but we also have a paper in Latin American cities, and we are finding the reverse. And I think that's really behind that. But having that said, I think there's a second part of that. So I think that your journey to work and your mental health, there are many different ways and channels that it can be associated. For the face of unexpected, or there's another way, I think there are some transportation engineers talk about travel time uncertainty. Like you have a big standard error or you have small standard error when you are calculating how long time you really take from home to work. This is, of course, important part, but I think this is the part we are not mainly aimed to capture here. Here, we are just trying to argue that even if we do not talk about the expectation part, even your daily experience, you're not realizing that you are taking effort from home to work.
Sure.
And that will also associate with the mental health. So I think my second way to answer Dr. Trott's question will be, so this is one part. And if we add the other part, which for sure it is there, the effect will be larger and we are having a lower, lower boundary of that.
Sure. But as you say, this is to assume there's no traffic jam. But the moment there's a traffic jam, then the expected and the actual, there's a difference.
I'm not saying that we are assumed there's no traffic jam. This is this variable, but I think the main conclusion is based on the overall commute time. I mean, I'm just saying that. So we are focusing on that with the admission that part is also.
That's why you control the delay time.
Yes. Yeah. So that part may be even bigger. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next question, Senhu.
Okay. Hi, hello, Xize. Thank you so much, first of all, for your interesting presentation. So my question is about the finding that, for example, you find that the negative effect of commuting time is not highly significant in white-collar jobs. So actually, my question is that, for example, is it possible that in the future research that we can test what is the mechanisms? For instance, people in white-collar jobs may have, for example, more access to flexible working arrangement, or they have more benefits. And actually, you have mentioned that this is also important. So this is one of the possible solutions to reduce the mental health problems associated with long commuting time. And so I think maybe it is possible to test, for example, why people in good jobs have, so they're less likely to suffer the mental health problems. And my second question is also related to your policy implications. So in your policy implication, you propose, propose 3 possible solutions. I think the first is about, the solution at company level. For example, providing the possibilities of working at home or flexible working arrangement. I think this is an important way. And the second is to improve the efficiency of traffic. I think this is also possible, especially with the rise of AI and machine learning. We can significantly improve the efficiency. But I'm wondering about the third option. That so I'm just wondering how realistic is the third option, for example, for the government to offer the public housing, given that the housing price is very expensive in Beijing. Yeah, thank you.
So thank you very much, Dr. Wang. So for the first question, I think Dr. Wang is asking about what's the mechanism behind white-collar workers. Yeah. Actually, I mean, so I think the first way to answer this is, so we believe one of the most important mechanism behind that is flexible work schedule.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we have not collected about this in our survey. So I think there's, of course, like two different ways to do that. I mean, first is you can conduct interview and look at everyone's personal experience, but this is not my field expertise because I'm still regard myself as a quantitative worker. So maybe this is something I can work with qualitative geographers or sociologists to work on this. And I think secondly, quantitatively, one way I can think of course, this is something we need to discuss more closely, is we can just ask about like everyday life. Maybe just saying that, like at least saying that we can distinguish those are white collar workers, they have a fixed work schedule, and those are the white collar workers, they have a flexible schedule, and can see whether the difference exists between the two. We have some anecdotal data saying that, so first of all, most of the white collar workers, especially, so all the government agencies in Beijing, so they have their flexibility to work, so have their own work schedule. I think actually both the central government and local government are actually promoting that. And secondly is, so for those working in, especially in IT, so the working schedule is very flexible. Of course, like even though flexible, there'll be long working time. This is something in the like in the media like recently. So that's the beyond the topic. So yeah, I think so. Hopefully that's answered the first question. And the second question about how realistic about the policy implications. I have how to say this. So promoting flexible work schedule and working at home occasionally, that is the easier part. This is something I would say low-hanging fruit, that if the companies can change their mentality, there's something easy to do. Improving transport network performance and especially public housing program. I have to say that this is even the more difficulty part to do. Even if I'll say that this is something the government is interested to do, especially like places like Beijing, because they probably do not need to rely on the property price to take most of their local government physical income. But like for like many local cities, basically they are like a fair share percent of their local income is by selling land. I mean, that is more difficult. So I think it's two sides of coins. That the first side is this is not an easy task. Second is they are interested and they're actually doing that. But I think I want to highlight one thing, which is actually 5 minutes lower makes a lot of differences. And because of the scale of that city, a metropolis with more than 20 million population, every incremental change actually can help a lot of people. So hopefully that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, Xize, there's a question by Christy about whether you check for the gender difference or not.
Thank you, Christy. Yes, I did. I think I'm not sure whether it's a good practice, but the reason why we didn't report that is because there's no difference. At least in our finding, I didn't find any difference between genders. Actually, I have to say that, I mean, because this is still work in progress. We test more than this, and this is the thing we find. It is the most significant differences. So thanks. So you have another, because you say one, so you have another question?
No, okay. Yeah, okay. Okay, Liu Yan.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Thanks for a very interesting topic.
Thank you.
So I'm just very curious about whether there will be more information that we can get from your statistical model if we try to separate public commute and private commute. And I think these two groups of people may encounter different traffic situations every day. They might have different levels of stress, especially in place of traffic delay, that kind of situation. So which is also probably beneficial for those urban planners to design according policies. So I'm just curious about what will be your opinion toward this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very that's a very good question. But I just want to ask for a quick clarification. So by saying public commute and private commute, so do you mean that they are actually offered by so are arranged by the company versus you are doing that by yourself?
By ourselves.
So by saying public commute, you mean that you are working in a specific,
Yeah,
but saying that you are working in the government, then the government have a shuttle bus, right?
Yes.
I think, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, not actually. I mean the definition of private commute and public commute, from my point of view, is if you go to work by your own car, you have your own traffic tools, then that's private commute. Then if you go to work by like bus, taxi, or other public transportation, then it will belongs to the public commute. Yeah.
Oh, I see. I think that's a really good point. I have to say that our finding marginally touched that, but of course the theoretical conceptualization is very different. So here we are saying that, so for instance, your transit and private automobile, they are like not that different, but this is a combination of different parts, right? When you are driving, we don't distinguish whether you are like driving with your family member or you are driving with your coworkers. And there are different effects. Actually, I'm aware that there are studies, I think in psychology, look at this. I think that's the fair point. And I mean, if I can say that the only issue is, so maybe this is something of the interest of sociology and psychologists, because this is like different social construct. But at the moment, I need to think about the direction, saying that how that be conceptualized to planning practice, especially policy recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe one way is saying that because in the US, this is like a way of shared commute called slagging. So basically saying that, so people just have like a chat group and they are just trying to like ride share with strangers like from time to time. And maybe that's a way to construct. But anyway, I think that's a very good part. I'll think about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Xize. Christy got another question, but because we don't have time, I want to raise this issue. I think her question is also related to my comments on this. I would like to say this is very interesting and policy implicative research. I have two very brief comments and one question. The first comment is for you, it's probably you could develop a nonlinear model to see what will be the optimal commute time, which do not bring in depression. So by using regression in this way, you assume like every increase of the commute time will equally add to the depression. But as Vincent said, there might be a threshold. So maybe some linear modeling, a nonlinear modeling, could see what will be the best time duration, which will not bring in depression. That will be policy implicative as you pursue. That's my first question. Second suggestion is, I think your research will be more important after COVID, because public transportation now is the major hazard for the infectious diseases rather than depression, mental diseases. And then in the post-COVID period of time, we really need to transform the public transportation model. And therefore, your research will make sense for the post-COVID period of time. These are my very brief comments. Just one question to your field. It looks like work stress and commuting time has been treated separately in the literature. But I would like to question that actually work stress itself might include the commuting time issue. They might overlap. So how your field handle this issue? How can you differentiate the commuting issue from work itself? You can answer very briefly. We don't have time. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Prof. I think both of the, so first I want to say that both of the comments are very, very helpful. We're happy to discuss. I still have some ideas, we're happy to discuss in a later time. Yes. So for this question, I think this is the very important question. I do not have an answer here. I mean, the only thing I can say is that our measurement of the work stress, the question we are phrased, did not intend to include the work stress related to a journey to work. And of course, whether this is like we achieve our purpose? I mean, that's another question. I think this is something we need to think more. But anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you. She's a wonderful presentation. Please join us to thank Xize again. Thank you very much. And then that's it for our presentation. I see you in the next week. Okay, bye-bye.
Yeah. Thank you again for all your time, and thank you for CFPR to invite me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.